This PowerPoint, titled The Quest and the Dream, is designed to help you complete your Chaucer journal using the SEEI process. 2 years ago, Martin Sheen starred in a film called The Way. The Way was about a quest, and the Canterbury Tales is also about a quest. The Road to Canterbury was starring 29 pilgrims, unlike The Way, which was primarily starring Martin Sheen. The pilgrim that you're concerned with, however, in the Canterbury Tales, is the wife of Bath, because the wife of Bath is the pilgrim on which you will be writing your journal. Now, there are 2 pilgrimages. One, Harry Bailey is the host in the Canterbury Tales, and Tom is your star in The Way, played by Martin Sheen. The quest of each pilgrimage is a location with a shrine. For the Canterbury Tales, all of the pilgrims are heading for the shrine of St. Thomas of Becket. In The Way, the pilgrims, or the people on the quest, on the road or on the way, are heading for the shrine of St. James in Spain. Now, who are these saints? St. Thomas of Becket was the Archbishop of Canterbury, who was murdered by some of the knights, 4 knights, who were supporting King Henry II. Thomas Becket came into conflict with King Henry over an issue involving the authority of the church. So he was murdered, and then he became a martyr for the church. He was canonized as a saint in 1173. St. James is the Apostle James, who is in the New Testament of the Bible. He was one of Jesus Christ's 12 disciples, the son of Zebedee, the brother to John, and he was a fisherman by trade. Why do people go on pilgrimages? People go on pilgrimages for spiritual reasons, for psychological reasons, and for practical reasons. And all 3 of those are in the Canterbury Tales. They also go on pilgrimages, as they did in The Way, for self-discovery, self-revelation, and in the case of Tom, who had lost his son and was coming to reclaim his body, he was on a pilgrimage in order to recover from grief. Now, the wife of Bath is the subject of your journal, so we need to talk about her a little bit. She's in the prologue of the Canterbury Tales. It's called the General Prologue, and she is described in these lines as a person whose face was bold and fair and red. To tell the truth, she was gap-toothed. She sat easily on an ambling horse, wearing a fair wimple, and on her head a hat as broad as a buckler or target. You can see that's a broad hat. About her broad hips was a short riding skirt, and on her feet a pair of sharp spurs. So this is an image I found online of Allison, that's her name, who is the wife of Bath. Now, the wife of Bath's prologue is what she talks about prior to telling her tale. For a summary, this prologue is on pages 257 to 275 in your textbook. The prologue is summarized in the coming study guide that I posted on eCampus. You can also Google that link. You want to scroll down to number 11, and that's where you'll find the wife of Bath's prologue and tale summarized. Now, the wife of Bath's prologue, this is what it looks like on the summary that I found on Cummings. This is Cummings' study guide. This is a little excerpt from it, and you can see that it gives the purpose, the type of work, and a brief summary of the prologue. The summary continues for several paragraphs, so I think that will be helpful to you. Now let's look at the prompt. There are two prompts. There's 3A and there's 3B. The SEEI journal prompt means that you're going to complete the critical thinking process for this journal. And the model will be given to you as follows. Okay, so the assignment is to find a quotation to use as an example in order to show how Allison, the wife of Bath, uses the strength of her voice as an authority on the relationship between the sexes. So you're going to use the wife of Bath's prologue to answer 3A. And I would suggest reading the modern version at this link. It's also posted on eCampus, and I emailed it to you yesterday. The modern version of the wife of Bath's prologue goes like this. Experience, though it would be no authority in this world, would be quite sufficient for me to speak of the woe that is in marriage, gentle people, since I was 12 years old. Thank God, who lives forever. I've had 5 husbands at the church door. So right out of the box, you know that she's got a lot of experience because she's had 5 husbands. Now, you've got to find a quote from that prologue, which is pretty long, but you need to find a quote. Any quote that you think shows the strength of her voice as an authority on the relationship between the sexes. So I chose the following quote. How many husbands could she have in marriage? At this point, I have never in my life heard a designation of the number. Men may divine and interpret up and down, but well I know surely God expressly instructed us to increase and multiply. I can well understand that noble text. Likewise, I know well he said also that my husband should leave father and mother and take me, but he did not mention any number, not bigamy or octogamy. Why? Why should men speak villainously of them? And by them she's talking about women who marry more than once, many times like her. So this is from E. Chaucer, lines 23 to 34. So the first thing you're going to do is state. In other words, you're going to tell me what Allison is saying. And it's a good idea to use the phrase, in other words. So here's what I wrote for state. In other words, Allison is saying that in answer to the question of how many husbands a woman should have, there is no rule or law specifying a number that is acceptable. She says that whatever number men may find, she looks to God's instruction to, quote, increase and multiply, end quote. According to Allison, men have no right to condemn multiple husbands since God does not specify or number, nor does he condemn bigamy, 2 husbands, or even 8 husbands, octogamy. For this part of the critical thinking process, you only restate in your own words what the quotation says. You don't give me anything except a restatement or paraphrasing of the exact words of the quotation. You put it into your own words. Now, elaborate is where you give more details and explanation. So, this is what I wrote for my elaboration. This quotation shows us how Allison, the wife of Bath, uses the, quote, strength of her voice as an authority on the relationship between the sexes. So I take words directly from the prompt. She has just told her audience of her 5 marriages, and she wants to justify what most of them would consider undesirable, if not immoral, behavior. To justify her 5 marriages, she cites Scripture, and this is meant to give her more authority with her audience. She lets them know that she knows what God instructed mankind to do and to show that her behavior fits within those instructions. This clever use of Scripture gives her more credibility and more authority with her listeners on the pilgrimage. Now, exemplify is where you are going to give examples. Allison knows that ordinary women with multiple husbands are condemned, and she uses the example of Jesus Christ with the woman at the well right before this quotation. But she wants to contradict that example with an earlier example, earlier that is in the Bible, instructions in Genesis, and a higher example, instruction from God. She is playing around with the words to increase and multiply. These words relate to the act of procreation, of having children, not to the act of having husbands. Since God was speaking to Adam and Eve, the only 2 people on earth, his instruction to increase and multiply makes sense. But Allison takes the words out of context to create an example that fits her needs. She wants to defend what she has done, to increase and multiply the number of husbands. This shows her confidence in her own voice and her own interpretation of the Scriptures. Her audience would be very familiar with the passages she cites, so by using them as she does, she is letting them know that she does not have to accept their interpretation, but has the authority to create her own. So this is more exemplified. This is more exemplified. She uses the example of the husband following God's instruction to leave father and mother and take me to show that while the man must obey God's instructions, she can get around them with her clever use of words. She ends with a challenge to her listeners. If God doesn't condemn multiple marriages, why should men? And last, the wife of Bath is an example of a woman who is willing to twist the truth to fit her own needs. She needs to present herself as an authority on the relationship between the sexes, so she uses a source her listeners respect, the Bible. So this exemplified section of your answer should give specific examples from the text and extend the connection between the journal prompt and the quotation. Notice that each part has something to do with that prompt. Finally, illustrate. And this section is not required, but if you can find an analogy or a metaphor, use it. If you can find an image, that would be good. Allison, the wife of Bath, might defend the action of the octomom who gave birth to 8 babies at once using the same scripture to increase and multiply. This part of the process is optional but necessary for an A. It allows you to find a metaphor or analogy for the idea in the quotation and to extend your examples even further with it. This is meant to be provocative and to make your readers think, even if they don't agree with you. Now for Journal 3B, you will need to use the wife of Bath's tale, not the wife of Bath's prologue. Again, you will choose a quotation to respond to the prompt and analyze it using the SEEI process. Here are the directions for Journal 3B, and the assignment section asks the question, what kind of relationship do women want? Describe a situation presented in the wife of Bath's prologue to make your case for that relationship, and this part has to be paraphrased. Part 2, find a quotation in the wife of Bath's tale to make your case for the kind of relationship that women want. Part 3, use the SEEI critical process to analyze the quotation in Part 2. So the wife of Bath's tale is different than the prologue. In the prologue, she's just talking. In the tale, she's actually narrating a story. And the story is about a knight who commits rape and is sentenced by his queen. He must, instead of being sentenced to death, he has a year to find the answer to this question: what do women want? If he does not, he will be executed for his crime. So he's a man with a mission. So how do you proceed? You read the tale. I suggest you use the Modern English Version. You review the summary of the tale in your coming study guide. Then you go back to the tale and choose from the tale a quotation to answer the question, what do women want? Then you complete the SEEI critical thinking process. Look at the steps above. You're going to state, paraphrase the quotation, or restate in your own words. You're going to elaborate, add details and explanation to clarify the statement. You're going to exemplify, give examples from the text and or from your own experience. And then, optional, you'll illustrate, find a metaphor or analogy, and include an image if possible. Good luck. You can email me with questions about this journal, or you can call me at during my office hours at 214-860-8793. Don't forget, this is a required journal. The SEEI journal has to be completed by everyone, and they count more than other journals. The deadline for the Chaucer Journal is Friday, March 1st at midnight. Best of luck to you.